paper there of equation 12, I think. Um, and this really goes to answering Ethan's question of like, what do you not just go if you do gradient descent on some potential energy? Do you not just always go and get stuck at the bottom of the well? And well, you would. So you need to add noise. So like what this is like an equation for an iterative gradient descent, but on each iteration, you don't just go in the line of steepest descent, but then you also add a little bit of noise. So if you're familiar with different like optimizers, it's like stochastic gradient descent basically, or SGD. But this is actually from the paper SGHMC, which is like a kind of stochastic, optimizer basically. But so people have used that in one way. One reason people use that is because it helps you get out of local minima or whatever is the idea. But the other reason to use it is that it's actually you can actually think of it as a Monte Carlo algorithm for sampling from a distribution instead of just like getting a point estimate of the minimum, basically. So that's like, so this is, you see this a lot in energy-based models that people sample from them by running like stochastic differential equations like this. And the reason why is that if what you have is the energy, that's like the u of theta, this equation. And so if you have that energy function, then it's really natural to use it in your like iterative like optimizer, basically. But yeah.
But it seems to me, so it's sort of like a bit of a it's a proper naming if you talk about it for a particular snapshot, but it's a misnomer, or it's kind of a sneaky way around. It's kind of the opposite, right? Because you're, in this sense, especially with the deep connections to thermodynamics, noise is actually, you could speak of it as energy or different errored information back into the system. But you kind of have to do this repeatedly, right? So on the bigger picture of what's perhaps going on is then it's kind of a misnomer, or maybe you talk about this being like metabolism, right? It needs, it's
Are you
not
saying
just
that, like the energy-based model term is a misnomer, kind of?
maybe not energy based, but
Okay.
like energy minimization. Often I hear about it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, in
But
that case,
energy
that's
based, I don't have that I don't have a problem with,
I
because
see what you're
that's
saying. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's really what's being minimized is free energy, not energy. And
right.
if you just think of it as like free energy minimization, then it comes into perfect kind of alignment with the statistical physics and with what's really going on. I think. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because like the when for the energy to be minimized, yeah, you would have to be at like some very low energy state, and that would be like a perfect, like kind of a deterministic, state. Like
Hmm.
it would have zero entropy. But if you try to minimize free energy, that's more like saying, okay, I'm going to minimize the energy with respect to a constraint that there's a certain amount of entropy, or
Hmm.
find the distribution with the same kind of spread or entropy that has the lowest energy, and that's like more so what actually happens when you run these like Monte Carlo simulations, basically.
But even there, you also still have to keep sort of introducing a metabolism, or you just have to keep introducing noise over and you have to keep perturbing the system, right?
Yeah,
If
you
you
have
want
to keep introducing
further,
noise. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm not as familiar with the term like metabolism, but yeah, you do have to keep introducing noise, which in thermo that corresponds to a heat reservoir. So like
Mhm.
when you have some system that's coupled to a heat reservoir, the you can often model it using like a Langevin equation, which
Yeah.
really looks exactly like this equation 12. Uh,
No, and what I meant by what I was saying by metabolism is just like, if you make analogies to brains or living systems that exhibit them, supposedly perhaps some shared thing about explaining, neural nets work. Well, they have them, they have to keep getting energy. They have to have a metabolism, right?
oh, I see what you're saying. That's like the energy input to the system, kind of
Yeah,
somehow.
which is, yeah, but it
Uh,
also, if it's a
Maybe a
constant
source term.
perturbative yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, someone added something.
Yeah, Max,
Yeah.
are you referring to a source term? Is it the gradient source term, or I'm not sure what the metabolism is.
Well, so
I'm
I think like
still.
Ethan was saying that like without that noise term, the energy always just decreases for this equation because you're doing a gradient descent on the energy here. So it's like a very damp system.
And
And
same with
without
free energy again too, right? Even there, you
yeah,
gotta, it'll happen.
right.
So
So
do you?
when you look at like modeling a system that has energy inputs and outputs, like, well, you could think of a living thing, or you could just think of something simple like a heat engine, right? Then it's for exactly what Ethan was saying. It's not just going to look like this equation, at least as if the equation isn't changing over time. So one way that energy comes in is through heat, which is that noise term. But the other way that energy comes in is through work. And the way that work is done is by changing the potential energy function over time, actually. So like if you run this with one potential energy function that stays the same, then it will just go towards kind of the minima of that potential energy function. But if you change the potential energy function, that kind of corresponds to doing something like moving a piston in and out of a box or something, like, changing the container that a gas is in, basically. And that's the way that work is done. And I think that what like Ethan's talking about as a metabolism is closer to the second one, actually, like useful work, because heat actually isn't something we can't just like absorb heat from our environment and use it to do useful work without running some kind of heat engine cycle. But if you think of like something like a battery, or like how we, food is somehow some kind of chemical battery, it's more like work than like heat, I guess. Yeah.
So the